Welcome to Occult Archives,
Oh, hey, everyone.
where we uncover the mysteries, myths, and legends behind history's most feared books.
From mystical grimoires
Yeah.
to ancient religious texts.
These books, they carry secrets,
Oh, they do.
too dangerous to be read.
Sometimes.
Are you ready to turn the pages of the unknown?
Let's do it.
This is Season 1, Episode 3,
3.
Shams al-Marif, the most dangerous book in the Islamic world.
Wow, that's a title.
It is.
And you know, it's a good one.
Let's dive in.
Okay.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into a truly infamous book, the Shams al-Marif, or the Son of Knowledge. For some, it's a guide to spiritual practices
Yeah.
and esotericism.
Right.
For others, it's feared as the most dangerous book in the world,
Ooh.
a cursed object that can unleash evil forces.
Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Like, unleash.
Okay.
I mean, that's a powerful
Well,
reputation
the reputation.
for a book to have.
It really is.
So what's fascinating here is this kind of duality surrounding this text.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's revered and feared
Yeah.
in equal measure.
Yeah.
And to understand why, I think requires us to delve into its
Yeah.
history,
Okay.
its attributed author,
Right.
and its actual contents.
You've brought together some really compelling material,
I try.
exploring both the historical context and what's actually inside this mysterious work.
It's pretty wild.
Our mission today is to unpack why this book holds such a powerful and often terrifying reputation.
Let's do it.
The Shams al-Ma'arif.
Okay.
It strikes me that this is a real heavyweight in the occult traditions
Yeah.
of the Arab and Islamic world.
Oh, absolutely.
Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, it's arguably the most famous occult book
Right.
within that whole world,
Yeah.
that whole sphere.
And it's not some slim volume.
No,
It is a substantial encyclopedia
it is big.
covering a really broad range of occult practices that were historically quite widespread in the Islamic world.
Yeah.
When we talk about these occult practices, for someone who's less familiar, what kind of things are we looking at here?
Okay, so think about like talismans,
Okay.
amulets,
Mm-hmm.
the methods for how they're created,
Right.
the specific materials that people believed would channel different energies, and the powers that these talismans and amulets were believed to possess.
So kind of channeling energies
Yeah.
from different places.
Yeah.
The book also explores the science of Arabic letters.
Yes.
What's that about?
This is about looking at Arabic letters
Okay.
and believing that they have hidden or magical properties
Right.
that go beyond just their normal use in language.
Okay, so like almost like a mystical element
Yeah,
to language itself.
absolutely.
And then you have magic squares.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about those.
These are really cool.
Okay.
They're these numerical grids,
Okay.
and they have really fascinating mathematical and symbolic properties
Right.
that the book goes into in detail.
So is this like numerology?
It has elements of numerology,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah. And then this is a big one. Talks about practices related to summoning jinn.
Summoning jinn.
Yeah.
That's the one that everybody's probably thinking about.
Oh, yeah?
That's where it gets a little scary.
Yeah, this is definitely where I think a
Yeah.
lot of people's imaginations start to run wild.
Right.
And, it contributes to this whole dangerous reputation.
Yeah, like this is a book that maybe you don't want to just pick up and start reading
Maybe not.
without knowing what you're doing.
Right.
And all of this is traditionally linked to
Yeah.
a single historical figure
Yeah.
from centuries ago.
That's the common understanding.
Yeah.
The book is pretty overwhelmingly attributed to Ahmad al-Buni.
Ahmad al-Buni.
Yeah, a figure from the 13th century.
Okay.
And he's often depicted as this
As a what?
almost mythical master magician,
Okay.
like the primary source for so much of this esoteric knowledge.
So a figure shrouded in a bit of mystery at the
Yeah.
center of it all. But our sources suggest that
Yeah.
maybe the traditional understanding of al-Buni might not be the full story.
I think that's right.
So let's reevaluate
Okay.
Ahmad al-Buni himself.
Well,
What solid facts do
Yeah.
we actually have about this individual?
this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
So despite the huge fame
Right.
of this book that's attributed to him, concrete biographical details about al-Buni
Mm-hmm.
are surprisingly scarce.
Interesting.
Yeah. So his full name
Okay.
was likely Abu Abbas Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Yusuf al-Qushi al-Buni.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
Okay.
And the period he lived in seems to be like the late 12th to mid 13th century.
Okay.
But even his death year
Yeah.
is uncertain.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
to see 1225, 1231, or 1232 cited
Oh, wow.
in different sources.
So even that fundamental piece of information
I know.
He's debated.
It's debated.
Okay.
We don't even know when the guy died.
That definitely adds another layer to the enigma surrounding him, doesn't it?
It really does.
Geographically, where were his origins?
So the al-Buni part of his name indicates that he likely originated from Buna, which is present-day Annaba in Algeria.
Present-day Annaba, Algeria.
North Africa. Our sources support this, suggesting he came from and spent a significant portion of his life in North Africa, later becoming strongly associated with Egypt.
Okay, so North Africa, in that period, he would have been a contemporary of some other quite influential intellectual and spiritual figures, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So he lived at the same time as the celebrated Sufi thinker Muhyiddin ibn Arabi.
Muhyiddin ibn Arabi.
Yeah, and what's particularly noteworthy is that they both came from roughly the same geographical region.
Okay.
And this connection is really crucial. Because
why is that?
al-Buni himself was a Sufi.
Okay.
And he was primarily known during his lifetime as a Sufi teacher.
Not as a magician.
Not as a magician.
That's a significant departure from the image of the master of the occult.
Right, like when we think about the author of this book, we tend to think about a magician.
Like a sorcerer?
Yeah. But actually, during his lifetime, he was known as a Sufi teacher.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Were there any specific connections between al-Buni and other prominent Sufi figures of that era?
Yes, and this is a key link.
Okay.
So al-Buni actually mentions in some of his writings that his Sufi sheikh.
His Sufi sheikh.
Yeah, his spiritual guide was Abdulaziz al-Mawi.
Al-Mawi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, al-Mawi was based in Tunis.
Tunis.
Yeah.
Okay.
And was also a primary spiritual master of Ibn Arabi.
Oh, wow.
So we have a direct connection there.
So a shared spiritual lineage?
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
It is.
So a shared background in Sufism.
Yeah.
Did this common ground influence their respective teachings in any noticeable ways?
It seems so.
Okay.
So we find these really interesting parallels between the teachings of Ibn Arabi and al-Buni, especially in areas like the profound significance of the Arabic letters and certain like core cosmological and metaphysical principles that underpin their understanding of reality.
I see.
So given this, I think it's more accurate to understand Ahmad al-Buni as a Sufi master who emerged from this really rich, speculative Sufi culture.
Speculative Sufi culture.
Yeah, that flourished in the Maghreb and Al-Andalus.
Those are places that are...
they're regions that are...
renowned for their deep engagement with mystical philosophy and intellectual inquiry.
Absolutely.
So speculative Sufism, I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Yeah, so it's a branch of Sufism that has a strong emphasis on theoretical and philosophical explorations of mystical concepts.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's this really interesting intellectual environment that nurtured all these really profound mystical thinkers who also engaged deeply with philosophical and cosmological ideas.
Okay.
And al-Buni fits squarely within this tradition.
Got it.
Much like Ibn Arabi.
Okay.
And other influential figures from that same time and place.
I see.
And I think understanding this is really crucial, because it suggests that al-Buni's engagement with these esoteric ideas, it wasn't necessarily about magic in a really simplistic sense, but rather a kind of philosophical and mystical exploration of the deeper interconnectedness of the cosmos.
Right.
And that's like a hallmark of this particular Sufi tradition.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this intellectual grounding is often overlooked in a lot of the more sensationalized portrayals of this book and of al-Buni himself.
And how was al-Buni regarded later in his life?
Yeah.
Did his reputation as a Sufi teacher endure?
It seems so. All the historical accounts indicate that later in his life, al-Buni became particularly revered as a great Sufi teacher in Cairo.
In Cairo?
In Cairo.
Wow, okay.
And he would guide disciples in these fundamental Sufi practices.
Okay, like what?
Like dhikr.
Dhikr.
Yeah.
What's dhikr?
It's the remembrance of God through specific recitations.
Okay.
And also khalwa.
Khalwa.
Yeah, which is like a spiritual retreat for deeper contemplation.
I see.
And most of his writings, which scholars refer to as the Corpus Bonionum.
Corpus Bonionum.
Okay. They really support this Sufi identity. And even after his death, his tomb became a significant place of pilgrimage.
Wow.
Which further solidifies his status as a respected Sufi teacher.
So almost like a saint.
Yeah. perhaps even considered a saint.
A wali.
Yeah, a wali, exactly.
Okay, so the historical figure of al-Buni
Yeah,
was primarily a Sufi master.
it seems so.
This really shifts the perspective
It does.
on the origins of this infamous book.
Yeah.
So where does the Shams al-Marif, as we know it, actually come in? So let's look at the distinction
let's get into that.
between al-Buni's authentic works and this notorious text.
So this is where the narrative, I think, takes a fascinating turn.
Okay.
So the vast majority of the writings that can be definitively attributed to al-Buni are indeed straightforward books.
Yeah.
On Sufism.
On Sufism.
Yeah, covering the Sufi path, its practices, and the profound significance of the divine names in spiritual life.
And what about those writings that delve into more esoteric topics?
Okay, so even those writings that do get into the more esoteric stuff, they do so within a very clear Sufi framework, very much in line with the speculative Sufi traditions that were prevalent in the Islamic West.
In the Islamic West at that time.
At that time.
So if his main body of work was Sufi in nature, what accounts for this highly influential book of what's often seen as magic? So much of his stuff is about Sufism. How did we end up with this book of magic?
So the key point, I think, to understand here is that none of al-Buni's authentic works are the Shams al-Marif, as we recognize it today.
As we know it today.
Yeah.
So it's changed over time.
Yeah. And recent scholarly investigations by researchers like Noah Gardner. And John Charles Coulon, who have closely examined the Bonian corpus, suggest that only around 5 works.
5 works?
Yeah.
Only 5?
Can be confidently attributed directly to al-Buni.
Directly to al-Buni?
Yeah.
Wow.
And these include more conventional Sufi texts and some that explore those esoteric themes, like Lataif al-Ishrat.
Lataif al-Ishrat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the original Shams al-Marif wa Lataif al-Awarif.
Shams al-Marif wa Lataif al-Awarif.
Yeah, which was frequently shortened to just Shams al-Marif.
Okay, so there was an original Shams al-Marif that al-Buni himself offered.
It seems so.
Okay.
And according to medieval sources, this original Shams may have been his most well-known work during his lifetime.
Okay.
However, the Shams al-Kubra.
Shams al-Kubra. Okay.
Or Great Son of Knowledge.
Great Son of Knowledge.
Which is the massive encyclopedic text that we know today and that carries the infamous reputation is significantly different.
Okay.
And it doesn't appear in historical records until the 17th century.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's almost like a case of mistaken identity across the centuries.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
A later, much expanded work becoming associated with an earlier distinct author.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's essentially the prevailing scholarly view.
Okay.
So the Shams al-Kubra is now widely believed to be a compilation.
A compilation.
Created by one or possibly multiple authors around the early 17th century.
17th century.
Yeah, and this compilation drew upon al-Buni's genuine writings as well as the works of later figures who were part of this Bunian occult tradition that evolved in the centuries after his death.
Got it.
Abd al-Rahman al-Bistami is one such figure.
Al-Bistami.
Yeah, he was a significant commentator on al-Buni's work.
Okay.
And so his influence is likely present in the Shams al-Kubra.
So the dangerous reputation we're exploring is really attached to this later compilation.
I think that's right.
Not necessarily the original work of the Sufi master, Ahmad al-Buni himself.
Yeah.
That's a really crucial distinction.
Yeah, I think it is.
To make.
Yeah.
So what exactly is contained within this Shams al-Kubra that has given it this almost terrifying aura?
This scary aura.
Let's delve into the contents
of the Shams al-Kubra.
Okay, so as we've said, it's a very substantial text, organized into numerous chapters and sections, each dedicated to different aspects of the occult sciences.
And while it can certainly be described as a grimoire or book of magic, it's vital to remember that it still operates within the strong framework influenced by speculative Sufi thought.
Exactly.
So it's not just a random collection of spells.
No.
It's rooted in a complex cosmological understanding where everything is believed to be deeply interconnected.
Right. And that's, I think, a really important thing to keep in mind.
Interconnected in what way?
Okay, so...
What's the fundamental worldview that the book presents?
So the Shams presents this cosmology,
Okay.
where the divine names of God,
Yeah.
the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet that constitute those names, and all language, the stars and celestial spheres, the human soul, and all other facets of existence,
are believed to be intricately linked.
Wow.
Through this complex web of correspondences.
Cool. Everything's connected.
Everything's connected.
Wow.
Yeah. And you find these detailed discussions on the inherent powers of the Arabic letters. So there's this exploration of their specific connections to the 28 lunar mansions.
The 28 lunar mansions, what are those?
So these are specific segments of the sky that the moon traverses. Yeah, moves through each month.
Right.
And each one is believed to have unique astrological influences.
Oh, yeah.
The book also talks about their connection to the planetary spheres.
Okay.
The 4 classical elements,
Right.
earth, air, fire, water,
Right.
the signs of the zodiac,
Okay.
and various angelic beings.
So it's like a highly esoteric system of interconnected symbols and energies.
Absolutely.
And numbers play a significant role in this interconnected system.
Oh, they're absolutely central.
In what way?
So numbers are particularly significant in the creation of talismans,
Okay.
which form a major part of the text.
Okay.
And this is where the concept of gematria.
Gematria.
That's important.
What is that?
So this is the idea that each letter of the alphabet has a specific numerical value.
Okay.
So when you spell out words or phrases, they acquire a numerical value
Oh, right.
based on the sum of their constituent letters.
Like,
And this numerical value is believed to hold symbolic and practical power.
to really understand how this intricate system works, can you walk us through a specific example of talisman construction?
Okay, sure.
Maybe focusing on one of the planetary influences.
Okay, so let's take the example of working with the energy of Jupiter,
Yeah.
which is traditionally associated with qualities like protection and good fortune.
Okay.
So the Arabic letter specifically associated with Jupiter is Dal.
Dal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which has a numerical value of 4.
Okay.
So the instructions within the shams detail how you would then construct a 4x4 magic square.
A 4x4 magic square.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ensuring that the numbers in each row, each column, and both main diagonals all add up to the same constant sum.
Okay.
So you have to arrange the numbers in this 4x4 square so that all the rows and all the columns in the diagonals
add up to the same number.
But
yeah. Okay.
And then around this magic square, you would then inscribe the letter Dal 35 times.
35 times.
Yeah, which is the numerical value of the word Dal.
Okay.
When spelled out in Arabic.
Okay.
Dal Alif Lam.
Right.
And you might also incorporate various names of God that contain the letter Dal and are aligned with Jupiter's energies, such as al-Wadud, meaning the loving.
Okay.
So you're really kind of layering these correspondences.
So it's almost like a recipe.
Kind of.
But instead of cooking up a meal,
Yeah.
you're cooking up a magical talisman.
Yeah. And what would you then do with this inscribed object?
Yeah, what would you do with it?
Okay, so the book specifies that this talismanic symbol should ideally be inscribed at a time when the moon is in a favorable lunar mansion in the sky.
Oh, so the timing matters.
Timing matters.
Okay.
And one that aligns with the energies of Jupiter.
Okay.
The inscription itself could be done on various materials.
Okay.
Like parchment metal, like iron.
Right.
Or even a specific type of stone.
So the materials matter.
Materials matter.
The timing matters.
Yeah.
And the inscription itself obviously matters.
Absolutely.
And so once this is created, what do you do with this object?
So once it's created, this object can be carried on the person hung in a particular location.
Okay.
Or even used to create a potent liquid by washing off the ink into water.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which would then be drunk.
And you would drink that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the underlying principle here is to establish a really precise and potent connection between the celestial sphere of Jupiter, its corresponding letter, its numerical value, relevant divine names, and the auspicious astrological timing of the lunar cycle.
So it's like aligning all these different forces.
Aligning all these different forces.
To create this powerful object.
Exactly.
Wow. And these talismans were intended for a wide range of purposes.
Yeah. So while they could be used for spiritual enhancement and drawing positive energies, the shams also details their application for more practical worldly matters.
Okay. So like what kind of things?
So things like attracting favor from others, even romantic attraction.
Okay.
Bringing about healing from ailments like fevers, or relief from scorpion stings.
Wow.
And even
what?
More controversially, for protection against or harming of enemies.
Okay, so it can be used for good or for bad.
It can be used for good or for bad, but the text often includes caveats and warnings against those uses that are intended to harm, emphasizing the importance of divine justice and the potential repercussions of doing black magic.
Right, of using these powerful forces for evil.
Yeah.
You also mentioned Saturn earlier.
Yeah.
Is the process of talisman construction similar for other planets?
Yeah, so the fundamental process remains the same.
Okay.
But you're going to utilize the specific letter, numerical value magic square dimensions, and associated divine names that correspond to the particular planet that you're working with.
So it's all about correspondences.
It's all about correspondences.
Okay.
So, for example, with Saturn, the associated letter is G.
G.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which has a numerical value of 3.
Okay, so 3 instead of 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you would then typically construct a 3x3 magic square.
A 3x3, got it.
And incorporate the letter G along with divine names and astrological timings aligned with Saturn's influence.
So basically the whole system of correspondences shifts depending on the desired outcome and the celestial body being invoked.
Yeah.
The power attributed to the divine names of God seems to be a really central theme.
It's huge.
Like how, so...
Okay, so the Shams places a huge emphasis on the power that's believed to reside within the divine names of God.
Right.
So each name, like Al-Rahman, the most compassionate, or Al-Salam, the source of peace, is considered to possess specific inherent powers that align with its meaning.
Okay.
And the name Allah is regarded as the most comprehensive and powerful of all the divine names.
Okay.
And then the book also discusses this concept of Ism al-Azam.
Ism al-Azam.
Yeah, which is like the secret greatest name of God.
The secret greatest name of God.
Yeah. It's said to be composed of 73 letters.
73 letters.
Yeah, and known only to the prophets.
Okay.
And it grants miraculous abilities to those who know even a portion of it.
Wow. And are there any accounts of this name being used?
So there are accounts within Islamic tradition of figures like Jesus using these names to perform miracles like raising the dead.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really powerful stuff.
And even specific phrases like the